The afternoon fell slowly over the old neighborhood of cypresses and low walls, where the rooftops creaked under the touch of a weary sun and the chapel bells tolled in the distance, as if marking not time, but memory. The streets were almost empty, except for a figure moving slowly among the cracked flower beds, an elderly woman in a beige dress, with a wooden cane and eyes that had wept more than any river. Her name was Martha. Widowed for 23 years, she had lived alone since the world stole her husband on a treacherous curve of the road, and since her daughter, 10 years later, left without leaving an address. She lived among ghosts and dried flowers, and the only companion that remained was an old cobalt-blue Mustang, inherited from her husband. It rarely left the garage, except on Sundays, when Martha, in a ritual of longing, started it just to hear the engine roar. But on that Saturday, something unusual happened. The car wouldn't start. She tried 2-3 times, turning the key with the strength of someone who still believed in the impossible. A strange grinding noise escaped from the hood, and after that, only silence. Martha sighed and closed the door gently, as if apologizing to the car. She looked around. No one. Not even the mechanic neighbor was nearby. That's when she heard a small voice coming from the opposite sidewalk. "Ma'am, do you need help?" The voice was sweet, firm, and seemed not to match the age of the one who spoke it. Martha turned carefully and saw a little black girl, about 8 years old, wearing a faded red dress, open sandals, and a backpack that seemed heavier than she was. There was dust on her knees and a strand of hair falling over her left eye. But what stood out most was the way she looked at her, without pity, without fear, without haste. "Do you know anything about cars?" Martha said, raising an eyebrow in disbelief. "Not much, but I know when someone needs company," the girl replied, walking with short steps toward the gate. Martha hesitated, but there was something in that presence that disarmed the silence. She opened the gate with a slight creak. The girl entered, and instead of going straight to the car, leaned against the bumper with her 2 small hands and looked at it as if conversing with an old friend. Then she crouched down, looked under the car, touched something, and stood up smiling. "It's leaking oil. I think I can help." "And how's a little girl going to fix that?" the old woman said, half ironic, half curious. "I can try. Sometimes we just need someone trying with us," she replied, and her words seemed bigger than her size. Martha gave in. She brought tools, rags, and a bottle of water. She sat in the folding chair beside the garage and watched the girl slide under the car, tinkering with fingers dirty with hope. It was then, when the girl reached out for a screwdriver, that Martha saw the ring. It was small, golden, with an inscription nearly faded on the inside. She stood up abruptly, as if time had stopped around her, and walked toward the girl with trembling steps. "Where did you get that ring?" she asked. Her voice choked. The little girl slid out from under the car slowly and looked at the woman. Her eyes were calm but full of unasked questions. "I've always had it. My mum said it would bring me back home." Martha's world spun. Her hands sought support on the garage wall. Her heart raced. That ring was identical to the one she had given her daughter when she turned 18, a gift that had belonged to her father, the last thing she held before leaving, never to return. "What's your mother's name?" Martha whispered, almost voiceless. The girl hesitated, then answered, "Sarah. Sarah Louise." The name struck like thunder in the old woman's chest. Her eyes filled with tears so old they seemed too salty to exist. She sat down slowly, never taking her eyes off the child. "She's my daughter. You're my granddaughter?" The girl smiled, not with euphoria, but with a quiet relief, as if something she always knew had finally been spoken aloud. "I think so. Do you believe a small gesture can change someone's destiny?" Comment below. Yes, I believe in the power of faith. The silence between them was filled by the distant song of a bird and the scent of wet earth. Martha felt like she was dreaming, but the touch of the girl's hand on her arm was real. A warm, living hand that asked for nothing, only existed there. There were so many questions, so many lost stories, so many unlived years, but for some reason, that seemed enough. For now. "Why didn't your mother ever come back?" Martha asked with a thread of pain. "She tried, but she got sick. Her life wasn't easy. She told me lots of stories about a place with roses on the porch and a lady who spoke with her eyes. I wanted to meet it, so I came. Alone? I came with someone who dropped me off on the road. The rest I walked. I just wanted to see that blue car she talked about so much. And you." Martha wept. Not hysterical tears, but a gentle, freeing cry, like all the puzzle pieces were finally falling into place, not by logic, but by love. She hugged the girl tightly, as if time could be conquered in a single gesture. And there, under the setting sun, two generations met not by chance, but by grace. That old Mustang now still had become the altar of a redeemed promise, and as the sky turned purple and the chapel bells rang once more, Martha knew that tomorrow would no longer be the same. The night fell unhurriedly, as if it knew something sacred had happened in that forgotten corner of the world. The street took on golden hues under the aged lampposts, and the wind, lighter now, carried with it a scent of resurrection, as if the walls of the old house had begun to breathe again. Martha and the girl sat side by side on the porch, sharing a cup of chamomile tea and a silence that said more than words. The old woman observed each feature of her granddaughter's face, like someone trying to reclaim memories she never had, but that her heart insisted on recognizing. It was like seeing a mirror of what had once been shattered, but was now, against all reason, being restored. "Do you have a name?" Martha asked softly after a few minutes. "Maya," the girl said with a restrained smile. "My mom chose that name because it means hidden miracle. And do you think you're a miracle?" "Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I just feel lost." The old woman touched her hand tenderly. It was a small hand, but firm, marked by a path too long for someone so young. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if speaking silently with her late husband. Too, as if saying, "She's back. Through her our daughter came back." That night, Martha prepared the room where her daughter slept when she was a child. The furniture was untouched, but time had covered everything with a thin layer of dust and forgetfulness. As Maya lay down with eyes shining from exhaustion and contentment, Martha stood at the doorway watching quietly. It was like an apparition from the past, or perhaps a call from the future. The next morning, the sun found the room's window with an especially gentle light. Maya came down the stairs, her hair loose, as if she'd always belonged to that house. Martha was in the kitchen, making pancakes, something she hadn't done in years, as if she'd only now remembered that she also knew how to care for someone else. "How long are you staying?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but with her voice caught in her throat. "I don't know. I don't have anywhere else to go." "What if you stayed here?" Martha said, turning slowly, holding the spatula like a makeshift shield, against the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "What if we started over, even if it's late?" Maya didn't answer with words. She ran to her and hugged tightly in a gesture that said, "Yes, please, yes." That same day, they decided to fix the Mustang together. It was like rebuilding time. They went to the junkyard, talked to an old mechanic friend of the family. They and bought her the missing parts. The girl got covered in grease, laughed like an ordinary child, and dirtied her hands with the present, but her soul was clean. With a clean as if each fitted piece was a memory returned. And it was there, under the light of a clear sky and with the hood open, that the second revelation came. Among the old rags in the glove compartment, Maya found a folded letter, yellowed letter, folded by time. It was written in her mother's handwriting. It was a letter penned by Sarah, but never sent. "If one day you return, one day, my daughter, if by some divine grace and you return to that house, tell your mother that I told you, loved her. Tell her I ran away because she was afraid I'd be less than she expected. Tell her the ring was my tie with that a promise. Of one day, we'd be family again. And if she still has faith, you'll please ask her forgiveness to forgive me." The woman read it with trembling hands, trembling. Her eyes where tears fell, tears like heavy rain on the paper. It was too late to embrace her mother-daughter, too late to undo old wounds, but not too late to love her granddaughter. And perhaps, just maybe, that was enough for eternity. "Your mother loved you, Maya, and you brought me back something I thought I'd lost forever." The girl looked at her eyes, saying nothing. She only just held her hand tightly. The following week they started attending the neighborhood church. She learned the hymns with startling ease, as if she already knew them. The pastor smiled warmly at them, introduced them as grandmother and granddaughter, bound by a thread of grace, granddaughter, bound by a faith that time couldn't break. And there, in that humble community, they found something no letter, no car, no inheritance could ever offer: belonging. One afternoon, as they returned from school and the market, Maya saw a group of boys mocking an elderly woman carrying heavy bags. She ran to them, intervened, and helped her, the woman with no bags, without expecting anything in return. The older woman watched from afar, and a phrase drifted to her mind, like a breeze from the spirit. Justice will flourish where the seed of kindness is sown. On the way home, she said to her daughter, the girl, "You didn't just help me with the car, Maya. You helped me restart my soul's soul. I was stalled, rusted inside. But you brought back motion." She smiled, her eyes on the now gleaming Mustang again. The girl looked at her and replied, "Maybe that's what miracles do. They don't fix everything at once, but they make us believe it's worth trying." That night, as the wind passed gently through the curtains and the crickets sang like they were telling ancient stories, the old woman wrote a new letter. She wrote, but this time it was for her granddaughter. She left it on the girl's pillow, folded carefully like a gift for the future. "My dearest granddaughter, not every love needs to start from the beginning. Sometimes it starts in the middle when we least expect it. You arrived like a whisper on a warm afternoon and became the loudest cry of my heart. Thank you for teaching me there was still time. Time to forgive, time to begin again, time to live. I promise you that from now on, this house will be yours too. And if one day you lose yourself, as we all do one day lose ourselves, may this home always find you again. With all my love, your Martha grandmother, Martha." The weeks passed like pages turned in an ancient book, and soon the small neighborhood knew the story of the girl who'd fixed not just a car, but an entire woman. She now attended the local school, now walking each morning with her books pressed against her chest and a smile open to anyone who'd pass by. Neighbors began to notice a quiet change in things. She resumed tending the garden. The old woman resumed humming while sweeping the porch, humming and humming the old Mustang. It was no longer just a choked-up memory stuck in time, but a symbol of something reborn. A covenant not broken, only asleep. Broken, only broken. One quiet Sunday, quiet as they cleaned the living room shelf together, Maya found something. A framed photograph, turned face down. It was a faded image of an old woman, her husband and their daughter still so young. The girl stood still for a moment, staring at that picture like it held a forgotten tune. The grandmother noticed the quiet and came closer. "That was your mother," she said, her voice soft but steady, like a memory finding its footing. "As stubborn as you, and as beautiful as you. You got more from her than you think," she said. The girl smiled faintly. The courage, the walk, even that look that silences folks. She didn't answer anything. Instead, the girl she lifted the frame and set it upright, front and center on the shelf. A small gesture, but heavy with resolve. Time to let memories breathe. By day's end, she had an idea. "Want to take a drive? In the Mustang?" The girl blinked, surprised. "It ain't made for sitting still, and neither are we," the old woman said. "Time the streets know we're here." The car rolled out with a gentle rumble, like it was half-thrilled itself. They cruised old streets past the market, the school, the dirt field where kids kicked soccer balls. At every corner the girl waved, grinned, spun quick stories, and the old woman listened like she was gathering jewels, collecting every word like treasure. But when they pulled up to the town cemetery, she stopped. The girl pointed. "Can we go in?" The woman faltered. It had been years since she'd set foot there. But with her granddaughter beside her, anything seemed possible. They walked in quiet, stepped soft on hallowed ground, to the gravestone of her husband rested. The grandfather the girl never knew. The old woman knelt, fingers brushing cold stone, knelt with creaky knees and whispered, "She's back. My love, she's home. Not how we thought. Not ours. But look who she brought." The girl said nothing, just placed a single white rosebud on the grave. Then, quiet, she reached into her pocket and drew out the small chain with that ring she'd worn on her finger. She held it out to her grandmother, but the woman pushed it back. "Keep it," she said. "That ring's more than memory. It's a vow. And vows, well, vows don't break." They left hand in hand, eyes damp but hearts settled, like a storm had passed. Back home, the girl found something else. On the car's hood, an old Mustang's notebook, weathered notebook. Inside were sketches from her mother as a kid, doodles of cars, wheels, scribbles like, "I want to race with Dad," "Gonna drive Mom to the sea," and at the end, a hand-drawn line, hand-scrawled, "If one day you lose, I'm lost. Find me where the engine's sound meets the soul's." The girl closed it gently and tucked it beside her seat on the passenger seat. Next morning, Sunlight kissed the porch with a tender glow as they sat outside. The old woman was knitting, working red yarn into something, a sweater for her granddaughter, her. The girl, eyes on the field, held a slip of paper in her hand. "What's that?" "A flyer for a science fair," she said. "Me and 2 friends at school built an electric motor project. We're presenting at school." The grandmother's eyes crinkled. "You think I'm missing that? I reckon you'll be the first grandma in the front row, with the loudest car in the lot." They both laughed, and that laugh wove into the morning breeze like a seal on all they'd shared. Then the girl looked skyward and said soft as a prayer, "Gran, you think Mom sees us?" The woman didn't answer quick. She looked up too, at the clear blue between clouds, then at the ring on the girl's finger. "I think so," she said. "I think heaven always watches when love wins." The girl nodded, and they sat there on that plain porch in a forgotten lane, with a Mustang gleaming under the sun and a heart mended across 2 lifetimes. The story closed like an old book, read one final time, not because it ended, but because life chose to keep going from there. And in the final shot, as the camera pulls back slow, the girl runs to the car, her mother's notebook in her arms, while the old woman watches, eyes wet with tears and a faint smile. On the hood, a white rose rests beside that ring, and